Before we learn how to make the donut dough, let's try to understand the ingredients and the recipe as well as the dough percentage for our recipe. So this is basically a brioche dough which we're going to be using to make the donuts. So the first ingredient is flour. I'm going to be using all-purpose flour in this recipe, but you could also use cake flour if you want. You could also use bread flour. I've seen bakers use all different types of flours. So what happens if you use cake flour, you will get a really soft texture. If you use bread flour, you'll get a chewy texture. So I sort of like using all-purpose because it's somewhere in the middle. And sometimes when you use cake flour, because it doesn't have that much gluten, it doesn't hold as well when you fry it. So that is why I prefer using all-purpose flour. So flour in a dough percentage is 100%. And when we calculate the dough percentage, we always calculate all the other ingredients based on flour. So for example, our next ingredient is milk. So we're going to be using 200 grams of milk in this recipe. So we divide 200 grams by 500 grams, so we get 40%. So milk is 40% of the flour. So what happens is when we bake in professional kitchens, we always use dough percentages because it's easy to scale up or scale down a recipe if you know this amount. So for example, if I want to use 5 kilo of flour, I can easily calculate milk by multiplying 40% into 5 kilos. So that'll be about 2 kilos of milk. So that is how it's really easy to use this. The next ingredient is eggs. So I'm going to be using some medium-sized eggs. So I'm going to use 3 eggs, and that will amount to about 150 grams. So why do we use eggs and milk in this recipe? Basically, they hydrate the flour. Also, eggs, it has a lot of fat in it, and the milk also has a little bit of fat in it. So it coats the flour and it makes the dough softer. The next ingredient is sugar. So we're going to be using around 50 grams of sugar in this recipe. So what sugar does is it gives flavor to the dough as well as a little bit of softness to the dough. And also it acts as food for the yeast. So it's really nice to use a little bit of sugar in the dough. So when you fry it, you can actually taste a little bit of sweetness in the dough. The next ingredient is salt. So salt usually ranges about 1.5% to 2% of the flour in most bread doughs. So in our case, we're going to be using 1.6%. So that's about 8 grams of salt. So what salt does is it seasons the dough so that it's not too sweet, and also it controls the fermentation in all bread recipes. So without salt, your bread will completely collapse when you try to bake it, or in our case when we try to fry the dough. If we don't add salt, the dough will rise and then collapse completely. So why does that happen? Because salt actually helps the gluten formation and it controls the yeast so that the yeast doesn't over ferment. So that is why salt is really important in this recipe. The next ingredient is yeast. Now yeast is one of the most important ingredients in bread doughs because without this you don't have any leavening and the dough doesn't rise and there's no fermentation as well. So because of this you get really nice air bubbles in the dough, and also you get a really soft texture in the dough as well. So we're going to be using 7 grams of yeast in this recipe. So that's about 1.4% of the flour. So what yeast will do in this recipe, it consumes the sugar and also the starches from the flour, and basically it produces carbon dioxide which helps the dough to expand. So this expansion of the dough will cause the dough to rise when we fry the donuts. So the final ingredient is butter. We're going to use 100 grams of butter in this recipe, which is 20% of the flour. So butter is essential in brioche dough, and what it does is it coats the gluten strands and also helps to tenderize the dough and gives a really soft texture to the dough. So this one we add right at the end. So when I show you how to make the dough, I will explain how to use these ingredients and in what order we add them. So let's go on to actually making this dough and understand how to develop the gluten in the dough and also how to ferment the dough as well. In this lesson, we'll be learning how to actually make this dough. So what I'm going to do is explain you the order in which we'll add the ingredients to the dough. So first what we'll do is we'll add the liquids right at the bottom. So I have my 3 eggs, milk, which is at room temperature, about 25 degrees Celsius. And then I'm going to add my sugar and yeast. I'm going to add in the flour, mix it together for about 5 to 10 minutes, then slowly add the salt inside it. And once that's mixed through, I'm going to slowly keep adding a little bit of butter. So I will explain it to you as I keep doing the steps, but just make sure to add it in this order. So just get your KitchenAid bowl ready and let's begin with the dough recipe. I'm going to add in the milk, then go in with the eggs. So make sure the eggs are at room temperature and they're not cold. Then I'm going to add in my sugar and yeast. So the sugar and yeast, basically the yeast can feed on the sugar, so it sort of activates it. And now I'm going to add in the flour. So this is 500 grams of flour, so straight in. So let's start mixing this at roughly about speed 2, and once it gets combined, we'll increase the speed. So after 2 minutes of mixing at speed 2, you can see that the dough has come together. So when the dough reaches this stage, I'm going to increase the speed to 4. So it's been about 5 minutes of kneading at speed 4. So what we're going to do now is add our salt. So the reason we add the salt later is because salt actually prevents the liquid from absorbing well in the dough. So that is why we add the salt after mixing the dough slightly. So now we're going to mix the dough for 2 minutes more at speed 4, and then we'll slowly start adding our butter. So just take the bowl out. And what I'm going to do is use a dough scraper here so that it makes it easier. And the dough is a little bit sticky, so just be careful. Just take the dough scraper out, and with your hand you can remove the rest of the dough. And what I want you to do now is scrape off all the sides. So all the dough which is stuck on the side, make sure to take it inside the dough. Just like that. Perfect. So now I wanted to show you the texture of the dough before we start adding the butter. So the dough should be developed like this. If the dough isn't properly developed when you add the butter, sometimes the butter splits from the dough. So make sure to develop it till this consistency. So it's not fully developed, but it still actually gained a lot of strength. So when we add the butter, it will absorb it really well. So we're going to add the butter in 2 parts. The first part we'll mix it for about 4 minutes, and then we'll add the next, and we'll mix it for another 4 minutes, and then I'll show you the dough. So let's begin with the next stage. So when you add the butter, make sure it's really soft, something like that texture, and it's not hard, so it can easily emulsify in the dough. So I'm going to take a tablespoon and add half of the butter inside, and now I'm going to put it at speed 4 and start mixing the butter. So it's been 4 minutes of kneading, and now I'm going to add the rest of the butter. So add the rest of the butter in, and now we're going to knead it for 4 more minutes at speed 4. So it's been 4 minutes of kneading now. So for the last 2 minutes of kneading, we put it at speed 8, and we knead it really fast so that it's just comes off the bowl and becomes really smooth. So after 2 minutes of kneading at super high speed, at speed 8, this is how our dough looks like. And it looks really glossy and shiny. So let's take it out of the bowl and I will show you the texture of the dough. So you see this dough? It's super shiny and stretchy. And this is exactly how brioche dough should be look like. So just scrape it off. And it shouldn't stick to your hand now. And if I stretch the dough, see how good a window pane I get. So that's really nice. So just make it into a round ball. And take a scraper and scrape all the sides of the bowl. Just stretch the dough like this, so it just forms a ball. Just make it into a circle. That looks really nice. So let's cover this with a plastic wrap so it doesn't get any skin on top of it. And we're going to have a look at this after 1 hour. So as you can see, the dough has almost doubled in size, a little less than double. So this is exactly the consistency I want. I don't want it to proof too much because we are going to be putting it in the fridge overnight to cold ferment so it can develop more flavor as well as a light texture when we fry the donut. You can also use it right now. You can shape it right now as well. You can divide it. But I would highly suggest to cold ferment this overnight to get a really light texture. At least that's what we do in the bakery as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take it out of the bowl, shape it into a ball, and then put it in the bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and ferment it overnight. So you see how light the dough is? It's super airy and nice. So what we'll do now is just take it in the center about 4 times and make it into a ball like that. And take your dough scraper, lift it up, perfect. That looks good. So I'm going to take a bowl, put it in the bowl and cover it. Perfect. So our dough is finally ready. So put this in the fridge overnight. So this is our dough from yesterday. So it's had about 12 hours of overnight ferment in the fridge. So now what we're going to do is I'll show you how to divide the dough as well as different shaping techniques of making donuts as well. So what I would advise you to do is get a bowl of flour, a scale, and a bench scraper to divide the dough. So let's begin. So put a little bit of flour on the workbench, on top of the dough as well. Don't put too much flour because you don't want the dough to absorb the flour. So you will see that it's got real nice airy bubbles in the dough. That's really nice. So that means the dough has fermented really well. So whatever dough bits you have, scrape them off because we don't want to waste any amount of dough. So this brioche dough, because it has a lot of fat in it as well as liquids like eggs and milk, so it's a little bit of wet dough, so it's easier to handle when it's cold. That is why also cold fermenting really helps to shape the dough as well. So now we're going to divide this into 3 sizes. The first size I will divide as 60 grams, the next one is 70 grams, and the third one is 80 grams. So I will show you why I'm dividing it into these sizes. So let's begin. That's 60 grams. Now I'm going to go for 70 grams. So I've divided the dough into 5 60-gram pieces, 5 70-gram pieces, and 4 80-gram pieces. So I'll show you why I've divided this into 3 sizes. So in the bakery, what I've seen is sometimes people use 60-gram donuts, sometimes they fry 70-gram donuts. So you can try either one and see which one you like, and you can just choose that size whenever you make donuts. So these 80-gram ones, what I'm going to do is I will shape them in a circle, and then the center, I will cut it through a mold. So we'll get like those ring donuts. So that is why I divided this into 80 grams, because the center we're going to lose. And then after we cut the center out, this will become around 60 to 70 grams, somewhere in the middle. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put a little bit of flour on the workbench and start shaping these. So just press it down, and you want to just basically shape it into a ball. Then what I like doing is just pressing it so that it seals, and then you just roll it just like that. So you get a nice and smooth ball like that. So let's have a look at that again. Press it down. So make sure the smooth side is on the top here. Just stretch it like that, maybe 4 or 5 times. Then pinch it so it seals, and then roll it like that. So you get a ball like this. So this is a 70-gram dough ball, and I'm going to show you a different method of shaping, which is called braiding the donut. So what I'm going to do is divide this into 2 pieces, so 35 grams each. Put a little bit of flour, press it down like that, and then pinch it like this. So make it into a cylinder and seal it, and we're just gonna roll it like that. So you get something like this. So the same thing for the other one as well. You press it down slightly, put a little bit of flour at the bottom, so you pinch it like that, and then you pinch it so it seals the dough, and then we start from the center and we go out. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is make sure that the seam goes down, and we start from the top and we just start braiding it like that. So this is a super easy braid because it's just 2 doughs. So, and then you press it and you seal the ends like that. So that's our braided donut. So make sure where the seam is, that goes down slightly, so when you fry it, it doesn't open. So set this aside. So now for our 80-gram dough balls, what we're going to do is shape it into a circle similar to the other one, and same technique as before. Just seal it, roll it like that. So now what I'm going to do is put a little bit of flour on the top as well, and just set it aside to rest a little bit, because we're going to be rolling it with a rolling pin to stretch it out slightly. So repeat the same thing for the other 4 dough balls. So to shape the ring donuts, I have made them into circles. Now put a little bit of flour on top, take a rolling pin, and you don't want to stretch it out too much, just a little bit, and make sure that it remains a circle. So that should be good, something like that. and take a ring cutter and cut the center. Just press it down so it comes off and just tear it off. So that's your circle donut. So that looks really even and nice. And let's weigh this as well, like how much it weighs. So this is about 67 grams. So as I said, it'll be between 60 to 70 grams. So that's pretty good. Now if you want, you can stretch it out a little bit, but not too much. So this should be good size. So let's repeat the same process for the others as well. And also we're going to be frying these small ones as well to make mini donuts. So these are also really nice and I really like munching on them. So let's have a look at this again. Put a little bit of flour on the dough. Press it down slightly. Take a rolling pin and stretch it out a little bit. Make sure that it's a circle. Take a ring cutter. Put a little bit of flour on it so it doesn't stick. Press it down and drag it slightly so it cuts it well. Then pull it out, and that's our ring donut. So set this aside, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other two as well. So these are our donuts after shaping them. So this is 60 grams, this is 70 grams. This is a braided donut which I made from 70 grams. This is the donut offcuts which we got from here, so mini donuts. And these are the donuts with a hole. So make sure that this is not too small and that you stretch it a little bit. Otherwise, when it proofs, it just sort of merges together and you don't want that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut baking paper in square shapes and for each of them individually. And we're going to put them on a tray and start proving them. So to cut the baking paper, I'm going to cut squares of 10 centimeter into 10 centimeter each. So it's super easy, doesn't need to be perfect. What you do is you put a scale and check where the 10 centimeter comes. Make a cut here and take your scale and just follow the cut, make a straight line and press it down, and that's it. So now what we do is we put the scale again. Just want to make sure, so this is around 30 centimeters. So you put a cut at around 10 centimeter here and around 20 centimeter here. Perfect. And take a scale, cut it like that, and same here as well. Perfect. So if some of them are smaller, don't worry because we have smaller donuts as well. We have donuts of different sizes. So for example, this one looks big. So I'm going to put a 70 gram donut on this one. And this one looks slightly smaller. So I will put a 60 gram donut on this one. And this one as well, I will put another 70 gram donut here. So let's do it for the rest of them as well. So now we're left with the ring donuts. So I'm going to make it around 12 centimeters for this one because it's slightly bigger in size. Somewhere around there. And just roughly cut this into 3. Perfect. So this one goes here like that, and this one also goes here like that. So when they expand, it will be nice to fry them. And this one, I'm just gonna put two here. And for the braided one, we'll need a slightly longer sheet. So just cut it like that. And cut it from here as well, just to make it even. And put it here like this. Perfect. So they all fit together. And now we're ready to put all these donuts on a tray. So I will show you how to do that. So we finally shaped and put all the donuts on baking paper. So now let's move on to the next step of proving these donuts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of them on a tray, and the other one I'll show you how I actually do it in the bakery. So you can also try to do that as well. So let's move on to the next step now and see how to actually proof these donuts. So the first method of proofing, what I will do is I will take a baking tray and just put the donuts on this, and I will actually put it in the oven with the oven switched off and just a bowl of hot water. So then the steam actually helps the oven to proof nicely and also to get a good temperature for them to proof. So just put them nicely spaced so that they have enough space to rise and they don't stick together. Perfect. That looks good. So the second method which we use in the bakery, now this is useful if you're actually going to sell these donuts commercially, is to use one of these trays. They're super helpful and super useful as well. So what you want to do is just fill these trays up, and because it has a lid, that will prevent the donut from getting a skin on top. So just put all the donuts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tiny bowl of water here, hot water, so it creates steam and the donuts will rise well, and then I will close the lid so it becomes like a proofing box. So this is a method I really like using, and if your kitchen is hot, you don't really need to put the bowl of hot water because my kitchen is a little bit cold, so I will do that today. So just put it in the center, and these will take anywhere between 1 to 2 hours to proof. So I will show you what it looks like and how you can check if they are completely proof to fry. So just set this aside and put a timer on for about 30 to 40 minutes just to have a check on them. After 1 hour of proofing the donuts, I wanted to show you how they look like and just check if they're ready or not. So let's open this tray as well. So what I observed was the ones I put on this tray proved a little bit more faster because they were put in the oven with hot water. So maybe the oven temperature was a little bit higher compared to this one. So these ones are very close as well, and these ones are almost there. I would say that this one is probably more ready compared to this one. And if you see, the smaller ones, they proof faster. So the smaller they are, the faster they will proof. So be mindful of that as well. So this one is definitely ready to fry. So is this one. But the one with the hole, I would suggest that maybe it takes around 15 minutes more. So what we'll do is we'll put them back in the oven, and with the oven turned off, of course, and let it proof for another 15 minutes. And we'll get our frying station ready with all the equipment, put the oil and get it heated up. So we're ready to fry as and when they're completely proofed. So what am I actually checking to check if they're proofed? What you do is you press on the side and it should spring back slightly. It shouldn't completely spring back. So when that happens, that means they're ready. Also, when I shake the tray slightly, you will see that they will wobble a little bit. So they're not there yet. Once they are proofed a little bit more, you will see that they will wobble. So okay, I'm going to put this back in the oven now to continue proving. So while our donuts finish proving, I just wanted to show you what is the frying setup, what I like using. So firstly, I prepare a tray with some paper towel. So once the donut fries, I can put it there and the paper towel can soak the excess oil which comes out of the donut. I also really like having a bowl. So this bowl is useful because whatever paper, baking paper is left, I can just quickly put in this. The next one, I use a spoon to flip the donuts. And this one, a sieve, I use to take the donuts out of the oil. So this really helps me get rid of the excess oil when I take the donut out of the frying oil. The next one, I would say one of the most important tools is a thermometer. So you really need to check what is the temperature when you are cooking donuts, because if you don't maintain a good temperature, which is between 170 to 180 degrees Celsius, your donuts won't fry well. So if the temperature is too high, the donuts get color too fast and they don't cook in the center. And if it's too low, then the donut absorbs a lot of oil. So we have to maintain a good temperature. So you can use this thermometer. You can also use a candy thermometer if you like. Anything is fine. I also really like using tongs. So this, you can use it to take the donut out of the oil. And in this case, I'm actually going to use it to take the baking paper out of the oil when I'm frying the donut. So I will show it to you when we actually fry the donut, how I'm going to use these tools. To fry the donuts, I'm going to use a 4.2 liter Dutch oven. So I find this really useful because firstly, the donuts cook really evenly and the Dutch oven actually retains a lot of heat. When you heat it up, it doesn't sort of fluctuate too much. So just because of a consistent heat and also consistent cooking. But you can use any cooking vessel you have, any pot which is slightly deep, you can definitely use that. So what I'm going to do now is fill this up with oil and get it to roughly about 170 to 180 degrees Celsius and have a look at my donuts after the oil is ready. So see if I can start frying the donuts. So I'm going to fill the Dutch oven with oil, roughly about a little bit more than half. Perfect. So when you get roughly about halfway through the Dutch oven, that should be really good. So I put roughly about 1.2 liters of oil in this. And what I'm going to do is switch on the gas and get it up to heat. So let's check the temperature now. It's been about 5 minutes of preheating the oil. So if you see, it's crossed 170 degrees. That means it's ready. Now what I'm going to do is lower the heat slightly to make it somewhere between medium and low, because I don't want the heat to increase too much now. So it's been a total of 1 hour 30 minutes and I wanted to show you the donuts. So now they're completely proof, they're ready to fry. So how do I know that? So if you look closely, if I press it, you can see there's a lot of air in it, and if I press it, it doesn't spring back immediately, it stays a little bit. Also, if I move it slightly, you will see that it wobbles. So that's a good sign, that means it's ready to fry. So let's begin frying these donuts. And I'm gonna go in with these small donuts first, just to test the oil. So when you put these donuts, what you do is you just swirl it like that, and you wanna make sure that the top goes at the bottom. So the smooth side goes at the bottom. So the same for these as well. And these should take about 2 minutes to cook, so 1 minute each side. But we'll assess it. If it needs longer, we'll give it more time. So just keep checking the oil. You don't want it to go too high as well. So if you see, it's about, yep, that's perfect. So it's between 170 to 180. That's really good. So now what I want to do is just have a look at the color and also take off. Oh, that's perfect. It's that golden brown color. That's exactly what you're looking for. And your baking paper will just come off on its own, and put it in the bowl there. Let's have a look at this as well. So that looks really good. This was about 1 minute on that side. And flip this one as well. Perfect. So now if these two are stuck, you can just basically unstuck them like this. That looks good. Our donuts have been cooking for about 2.5 minutes now in total, and they are definitely ready. So you see that beautiful color? Oh, that looks really nice. So just strain all the oil, just like that. Now we're gonna put the donuts on the paper towel so that all the oil, excess oil, can be absorbed. So I generally like to make these just to test if the oil is hot enough, and the oil seems quite good. So let's start making our ring donuts now. So for the ring donuts as well, we do the same thing. Just flip it like that, so the top goes at the bottom. And these should take about 3 to 4 minutes to cook. So I like to put about 3 at one time. Yeah, that's perfect. So it's been about 1.5 minutes. And I just wanted to check the color at the bottom just to see how it's looking. So you see that's a beautiful color, and now I'm going to flip them. Perfect. So it's been a total of 3 minutes of cooking. I'm just going to have a look at the bottom and see the color. So you see that's a beautiful golden brown color. So they're definitely done. And you don't want to get it too dark because then you get bitter flavors. So they've really risen well, and I really like the color as well. It looks really nice. So just take your strainer and gently lift it up, and you want to drain it as much as you can. And just put it straight away there on the paper towel. Now let's cook the circle one, the round ball. So skin side down again, and the braid as well. So you put it down like that, and then you just flip it. So you hear that sizzle sound? That's really good. You don't want the sizzle to be too much. That would mean that the oil is really hot, but this sizzle is quite good. So it's been roughly about 1.5 minutes. I'm just going to check the surface. Wow, that color looks really nice. That's perfect. And let's flip this as well. So you hold it on the corner and just flip it like that. Perfect. So it's been 3.5 minutes of cooking, and let's have a look at the donut. So you see that beautiful color, beautiful golden brown color. And if your donut has proofed well, you'll get this really nice ring on the side. That means you've made a really good donut. So let's put this aside. After 2 hours of fermentation, this is what our dough looks like. So now it's ready to fry. This one took a little bit longer than the one we put in the oven, but now it's definitely ready. So if you press the side, it should slightly spring back, and if you move it, it should wobble slightly. So this is definitely ready. So let's start frying this as well. To fry the round donuts, we're going to be cooking them for about 3 to 4 minutes. And make sure the oil isn't too hot. It should be between 170 to 180 degrees Celsius. So after 1.5 minutes, let's have a look at the donuts. So you see a beautiful golden brown color, and that's exactly what you want. So keep frying them for another minute or minute and a half, and then we'll check the donuts. So after 3.5 minutes of cooking, you can see a beautiful ring around the donut, and now we're going to put it on the cooling rack. This is how our final donuts look like, and I'm super happy with how they turned out. And if you follow all the steps I've taught in the class, you will also get donuts like this, and they're super fluffy, really airy, and it's got that really nice ring on the side as well. So now what I'm going to do is move on to the next section of the class, in which I'll show you different flavors as well as different glaze on the donuts and how you can present them. So how we take the simple donut and elevate it actually into something more beautiful. So let's begin with the next section of the class, in which we learn different ways of decorating these donuts. Let's learn in this lesson how to make our pastry cream for our custard filled donut. So the recipe is quite straightforward. We're going to whisk in 4 eggs with 50 grams of sugar. So you want to whisk it until it's combined, about 30 seconds. And also make sure to whisk in immediately, otherwise sometimes the eggs get like a skin on them. So once you see it's combined, we're going to go in with the flour and the vanilla paste. So add your flour, add the vanilla paste, and now we're going to whisk it for about 30 seconds to 1 minute until you see like a creamy mixture. So once you get a creamy mixture, you're going to put the milk to get to a simmer and take it off the gas once it starts to simmer, and then pour it into the egg mixture and continuously whisk it so the eggs don't get cooked. So keep whisking it until it's nicely combined, and then we're going to go back in the pan and start cooking this on about medium to medium low heat. And keep whisking it continuously when you're cooking it, because you don't want it to split and curdle. You want it to be really smooth. So make sure to keep stirring the mixture when you're cooking it on the gas. So after a while you'll see that it starts to thicken, and you need to get it up to a boil basically. Once you start seeing these bubbles on top, you cook it for about 15-20 seconds and then you take it off the gas. Then we're going to go in with our cold butter. So this really helps to sort of emulsify and basically lower the temperature of the custard and make it really smooth and creamy. It adds a layer of fat to the custard. So after the custard is nicely emulsified, put it in a bowl and make sure to cover the custard with cling film, touching the custard so it doesn't form a skin on top. So make sure to cool down the custard for at least 2 to 3 hours, and you can even put it in the fridge overnight so that it sets nicely. So let's start with the most simplest way of decorating the donut. So this is just some caster sugar. You can also add a little bit of cinnamon in this to make it cinnamon sugar, totally up to you. Now this is the most basic way of doing it. So what you want to do is take a donut which doesn't feel too hot. If it's a little bit warm, it's completely fine, but it shouldn't be hot. What you do is you put it in the sugar and just toss it. Then flip the donut. Perfect. So now what you want to do is just get rid of all the excess sugar. So this is just a simple sugar coated donut. And definitely use caster sugar when you do this. Don't use icing sugar, and don't use sugar which is like really big in size. Caster sugar is perfect for this. So let's have a look inside. So I'm going to tear this. You see how fluffy that is? Super delicate, really fluffy, really airy as well. Beautiful. Let's take a bite. That is so delicious. So after making the most simplest donut, just coated with sugar, we're going to move on to the next one, which is coated with sugar as well as filled with vanilla pastry cream. Now this is actually one of my favorite donuts to eat. Super classic and it's so delicious. So this is our pastry cream which we made earlier. So I cannot use this as is because it'll be too solid. So what I need to do is just whisk it a little bit, loosen it up a little bit, and then fill it in piping bag and then fill the donut. So just whisk it. Perfect. So when you get a texture like this, which is like really smooth and creamy, that is perfect to fill the donut. So let's put this in a piping bag. Just take a glass and a piping bag and just cover it, make some space in it, and take a silicone spatula and just fill the piping bag. So when you fill it, make sure to sort of press it down a little bit so it just fills it well. And now what you can do, just lift it like this so it goes inside. And you can even take it in your hand like this and fill the remaining. So this is also really nice. Just make like a cup so it holds together. Make sure the corners are always folded so it doesn't get dirty. You take the pastry cream and put it inside like that. Take the remaining pastry cream as well, put it inside. Perfect, that should be good. I can reuse that later. Do this. And now what we do is we take a dough scraper and just scrape all the pastry cream till the bottom, so then it's really neat. So just make it neater. Get rid of the air bubbles as well. Perfect. And now just seal the end. Either you can just tie it. I just like using one of these. It's very useful. Just twist it a little bit and press it like that so it seals it. Perfect, that's ready. So let's make the custard filled donut. So we have all the elements ready to make it. I've put the pastry cream in a piping bag. I've got some caster sugar to coat the donuts. So the first step, what I'll do is I'll just make a small hole in the donut just on the side here, not too deep, just a little bit. So it just helps us put the pastry cream inside. Just a small one. Okay, perfect. So second step, what we do is we coat the donut in caster sugar. And the next step, we put the pastry cream in the donut. So with regards to how much you put, it's totally up to you. I don't like putting a lot because I want like a good ratio between both. I don't want like too much pastry cream, otherwise it gets too heavy. So I will show you how much I put it, and you can just select as much as you want to put. And make sure the pastry cream piping bag can fit inside. Just slightly push it inside like that and fill it like this. So that much looks good to me. And right at the end, what I like doing is just piping here, just like that. So that looks really nice. It seems like it's completely filled. And this is what we do in the bakery as well. We just pipe right at the end. It's just for appearance. So this looks good to me. It feels like it has a good ratio of pastry cream and the donut. So let's do this again. So just make sure there's a hole in the donut. Coat it in the caster sugar. And get your piping bag with the pastry cream. Put it inside the hole. And this much, that's fine. And right at the end, you pipe it like that. That's how the end product looks like. And just set it aside. So this is how our classic custard donut looks like. This is so beautiful, super airy. So these look really delicious. So what I'm going to do now is just tear one apart and we'll see how it looks like from the inside. Wow, that is so nice. For me, that is the perfect custard filling. If you would like, you can put more as well, but I like this ratio of 2 parts of dough and 1 part of custard. That beautiful custard there. That is so good. Really delicious. In this lesson, let's learn how to make a quick chocolate glaze to glaze our donuts with it. So generally people use like cocoa powder to make chocolate glaze, but I like using real chocolate because it just gives a better flavor and it's not that sweet as well. So we're gonna make a chocolate ganache here, which is a super simple chocolate glaze. We have equal parts of chocolate and cream. So this is 60 grams of chocolate and 60 grams of cream. So I'm going to get this cream to a boil and then pour over the chocolate, let it sit for about 10-15 seconds and then mix it together to emulsify it. So let's get this cream up to a boil. So I've got the cream up to a boil and I just want to pour over the chocolate. So all the parts of chocolate are covered with the cream. Just like that. Perfect. So I'm just going to let this sit like this for 10-15 seconds and then we'll take a spatula and stir it and emulsify it. So it's been about 15 seconds and now you can see that the chocolate will have tempered slightly. Now if you don't have like these chocolate calories like I do, you can just chop some normal like dark chocolate or milk chocolate, whichever you like. So just mix it really well. So initially you'll see that it's not really combined, but as you keep mixing it, you will see that it will emulsify and become really creamy. So you can see it's already getting shinier. And keep mixing it from the side as well. So you see it's nicely emulsified and it's really shiny. So this is exactly the consistency you want. So since this is still hot, like you don't want to use it when it's hot to coat the donut, otherwise it doesn't stick to the donut really well. So I'm just going to cool this down for about 10-15 minutes and then we'll coat the donuts with it. So the next variation we'll learn is called the Boston cream donut. So in that case, we don't actually coat it with sugar, we just coat it with chocolate and we fill it with the pastry cream. So this is actually one of my favorites to make because I really like chocolate and I really like pastry cream as well. So just make a hole in the donut and put the pastry cream. That much is good. Fill it like that. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to coat the outside with chocolate. So just take your chocolate ganache and take your custard cream filled donut and just dip it like this side and side. Just like that. See how that beautiful shiny that looks? That's super delicious. So let's put this on the tray so all the excess ganache can drip down from the tray. So we've learned how to make a classic custard donut, a Boston cream donut, and the next one we're going to make is just a simple chocolate coated donut, but we're going to be putting some cake sprinkles on top. So it's not going to be filled with anything, it's just a simple donut, but just covered with chocolate and cake sprinkles. So just take the donut and coat it with the chocolate. So make sure all of it is coated. The glaze is really nice, it's completely covered it. So make sure to put the sprinkles when the chocolate is still wet. So don't wait for it to cool down. And I'm going to put these chocolate beads as well. So this is our chocolate glazed donut with the cake sprinkles, and let's stir on this as well just to see the inside. See how beautiful and light and airy that is. Beautiful donut. Such a nice layer of coating as well. So these are our final donuts and they look so beautiful. So the first donut we made was the custard donut. So it's super basic and really tasty. The next one was custard donut but covered with chocolate, which is called a Boston cream. And the third one we made was just a simple chocolate covered donut with some cake sprinkles. In this lesson, we're going to be learning how to make a really simple icing sugar glaze for our donuts. So I really like using this in the donuts which have holes in them, and this is a really fun way of glazing them. And even if you're like making it with your kids, I think they also will really like it, and they also really like eating this as well. So what we'll do is, the recipe is really easy. We'll add a little bit of milk to the icing sugar, and I'll finish it with some vanilla extract and a little bit of corn syrup. So this is about 125 grams of icing sugar, roughly about 1 cup, and the milk is about 20 grams of milk. But whenever you add liquid to the icing sugar, when you make a sugar glaze, you always add it little by little, because otherwise it gets too watery. So what we'll do is, we'll add 1 tablespoon at a time of milk in it, keep whisking it, and we'll see the consistency and see if we need to add more. And the corn syrup, I'm going to be adding about 10 grams in this recipe. Now the corn syrup really helps sort of solidify the glaze when it cools down on the donut, and it gives you like this crispy texture. So that is why I like using corn syrup. So let's begin making the glaze now. So start off by adding about 2 tablespoons of milk. And just whisk it through. So it definitely needs more. So I will add 1 more tablespoon in it. So this is too thick, so just add a little bit more. Perfect, that should be good. That consistency looks good now. Something like that. So you see that? It's liquidy, but it's still quite thick. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract in this, just for flavoring. And 10 grams of corn syrup. So just whisk it through as well. Perfect. So now you can glaze it as is, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of coloring in this, just so that it looks more fun. And what we'll do is, when we add the color, we'll glaze the donuts and then we'll add these sprinkles on top of them, just so that it looks really cool. So the color combination I'm going with today is sort of light purple, light pink color. So to make that, I'm going to use some pink, a little bit of orange, and some white color. So you can also use natural food powders to color it, like beetroot powder or even strawberry powder. But today I'm just going to be using food grade coloring. So just add a little bit of pink color in it. So I like just adding it on the side here. And a little bit of orange. Perfect, that looks good. So I'm going to take a little bit and mix it through. Just take a little bit. So that looks quite nice. So you see, I didn't actually mix all the color. A little bit of color is there. So I can use that later, but I don't want to use that now because otherwise it will get too dark. And just to lighten it up a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit of white color. So you get like this sort of pastel pink color, which I really like. Perfect. That looks really nice. So you see that? That looks good. So now let's dip our donuts, which have the hole in it, and let's finish it with the sprinkles. So when we dip the donuts, what I like doing is putting them on a tray, so all the excess glaze can sort of drip down on this tray and it doesn't make a mess. So let's go straight in with the donut. So what you want to do is you just want to press it down slightly, and the remaining glaze, you just want to sort of scrape it off the side like that, the excess glaze. See, that looks really shiny and beautiful. So what you want to do is just take all the excess glaze and just put it on the rack, so all the excess glaze can drip down. Perfect. While the glaze is still a little bit runny, I just like putting a little bit of sprinkles on top like that. That looks really cool. So let's do it for the other ones as well. So for the remaining two donuts, I'm going to go with a little bit more lighter shade just to get some more contrast. So just add a little bit more white color in it and mix it through. So that looks quite good. A little bit more whiter than the previous one. So just let's glaze these ones as well. I actually really like this color. Just strip off the excess. So I'm going to put the sprinkles on these ones as well. Perfect. So these are our glazed donuts. They look super cool and so much fun to make them as well. So when you glaze the donuts with icing sugar glaze, you want to basically rest them and let the glaze set for at least 30 minutes, because anything before that, the glaze will still be a little bit wet and it won't be crispy. So that is why what I'm going to do is just let them set aside, dry out for 30 minutes, and then we'll cut them and see the inside and also see the texture of the glaze as well. Our donuts have been cooling for about 30 minutes now, and if I touch the icing, it's nicely set and it's super crispy. So it shouldn't stick to your hand. So now let's bite in it, and I've been waiting for 30 minutes to eat this. It looks absolutely delicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it and show you how it looks like from the inside. So you see the icing is cracking nicely. And just see the crumb. Wow, that looks so good. Super light crumb, a lot of air bubbles there because of the overnight fermentation. And that looks really light. So let's take a bite. That is so delicious. It's super airy, really light, and I really enjoy eating that. So try making this at home, and if you can get your kids involved in doing this, that'll be really nice as well.